Hello and welcome to Behold This Crit, brought to you by the 4Nerds by Nerds channel. My name is Lee, general overall nerdy guy and DM of the new D&D podcast show Behold This Crit. Today, here to talk to you about creating custom homebrew monsters. Now, before we get too far into it, I would love to hear your ideas for making unique monsters. I know I've kind of struggled with this sometimes people have writer's block, so I would love to have the comment section kind of be a plethora of food for thought for other DMs. So any ideas you have for making monsters unique, please feel free to put them in the comments below, or take ideas from others that have put it down there earlier. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it. One of my favorite things to do as a DM is make custom monsters. There's just nothing like it. It allows you to really flex your creativity. And while it's not the most important task, it can be really helpful for kind of taking your players and flipping them on your head, particularly if you have a bunch of veteran players. Now, when I'm making custom monsters, I generally like to make it in the trifold, quadfold? I think it's quadfold. There's 4 of them, quadfold, fourfold, different kind of sections where I break it up into, being actions, bonus actions, reactions, and movement. Those are my go-tos whenever I'm starting to create a new monster. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and give the standard ogre a level up. So let's go ahead into D&D Beyond now and open up our monsters panel, and we'll go ahead and create a monster. And like I said, we'll go ahead and give the ogre a level up. So go in here and we'll use the template. And like I said, the D&D Beyond monster tool is really helpful for creating custom monsters because it allows you to make a template or take the template of what's already there and just add or delete things from it. So you don't have to do any of the really grunt work of putting everything in there because most of it's already there. Now, ogres currently only have a basic attack with either a great club or a javelin with an extra die of damage because of their large size. And don't get me wrong, the extra die of damage is nice, but there's nothing unique about it. It's just damage. You always know what an ogre is going to do because, well, honestly, they only have an attack and a movement, and they neither have the intelligence or the stat block to do anything else. So let's think of something else. When I think of ogre, I think of a giant lumbering savage that makes up for their lack of intelligence with their size and strength. Stuff like being able to rip trees out of the ground and use them as clubs, then pick up smaller characters with their hands. Stuff like that. And I think that's really a great place to start. And if you remember what I said a moment ago with the bonus actions, actions, reactions, you might see where I'm going with this. Tearing a tree out of the ground is obviously to add to its attack. You're getting hit with a tree. It's going to add something to the attack. But making it a full action is kind of taking away from it because since you're spending an entire action and an entire turn just to gain a weapon, it kind of doesn't fit. So I feel like this would fit perfectly as a bonus action. And we'll go ahead down here to the bonus action sections. So let's go ahead and call this Improvised Club. And the description we're going to go is this. As a bonus action, the ogre can rip a nearby tree out of the ground and use it as a weapon. While wielding the improvised club, the ogre gains a reach of 10 feet, and on a hit, the target must succeed a dexterity saving throw or be thrown back 15 feet and knocked prone. With the addition of this, rather than just simply giving it additional damage, we give some utility to the ogre, and it really fits with the whole motif of a large lumbering ogre. When someone gets hit with a giant tree club, realistically they're going to get knocked back, so it helps make the combat feel more realistic and fluid, and feel like the ogre is more of an ogre rather than an empty stat block with a tankin' spankin' counter. And alongside that, we can also add maybe another attack, because obviously they have a tree club in their hand. What about if they threw the tree? So we'll go ahead and add a ranged attack, and rather than a javelin, we'll actually just keep the javelin there, and we'll call this Tree Toss. It's such a stupid name. And we'll go ahead and use this definition. If the ogre is currently holding an improvised club, they can make a ranged spell attack, throwing the club, dealing 2d8 plus 4 damage. On a hit, the creature must make a DC 13 dex save or be pinned by the tree and become restrained. Once the ogre throws their club, they must find another club before utilizing this ability again. Makes sense. You throw the tree, you gotta go get another one, right? And right there, we have 2 really cool, really unique abilities that just added a completely different option that don't necessarily change the ogre, but rather give it more choices. I specifically didn't give it more damage because the utility effects to the attack are already pretty powerful, but at the same time, they're not detrimental to a prepared party. Now, as the ogre stands right now, it's already pretty unique. I gave it an extra attack and I gave it an extra bonus action, but we still want to go further, right? Now, my initial thoughts of the ogre, I mentioned being able to pick players up, so let's go ahead and add that. Let's call this one Lumbering Grip. and we'll call this another attack. So we'll go ahead and, rather than a ranged spell attack, we can actually just copy Tree Toss and use this. And just do this, a melee attack. And then we'll do this. The ogre makes a melee attack, and on a hit deals 1d6 plus 4 damage. If the creature hit is medium or smaller, they must make a dex save or be grappled by the ogre. That's it, and that's pretty cool. But let's go even further than that. Let's give the ogre a special trait or an ability, and we'll call this one, well actually let's just go ahead. Well actually I forgot to rename that. We'll call this Lumbering Grip, and then we'll copy this over, and rather than making a new attack, like I said, we'll make an action here. Rather than this, delete that, we'll call this Big Hands, because ogres got big meaty hands, right? And we'll use that for this. The ogre can maintain grapple on a medium or smaller creature with one hand and still make attack rolls with its club in the other hand. When making attacks while grappling a creature, the ogre has disadvantage on all attack rolls. I'll put all. Boom! And right there, it now feels like we're fighting a big lumbering ogre, just kind of madly swinging at these annoying little PCs. Now don't get me wrong, being able to attack while grappling is incredibly powerful ability. However, having to spend an action to grapple and then having disadvantage on any attacks while grappling does a really good job of balancing this out of how powerful it really could be. Honestly, I'm really liking how this is turning out already, and I'll probably use this later in my games. So with that all added, we have added the Lumbering Grip, we've added the bonus action of Improvised Club, we've added a really cool ability in my opinion with Big Hands, but if you wanted to go even further, go back to the first thing that I said in this video. Creatures generally lack bonus actions and reactions, so we have yet to make a reaction. Let's go ahead and do that now. Alright, an ogre is big and dumb, right? They're big and dumb, so let's go along with that. They have intelligence, but they don't necessarily think. They're more reactive than thought out plans. So what if, when they got hit, they instinctively reacted to the pain and maybe make like a large swing with their tree branch, right? Maybe something like this. Upon being hit with a melee attack, the ogre makes a big sweep with his club, striking all enemies in front of him. All creatures within melee distance must make a dex saving throw or take 1d8 plus 4 damage and be knocked prone. Melee distance is 5 feet unless it's currently holding an improvised club, where it will be 10 feet. And we can go ahead and call this, what's that thing? What's that? Instinctual Rage. Perfect, that works for me. Terrible naming convention, but you get what I'm going for. Aside from making this a random attack, putting it as a dex save puts this into players' hands on whether or not they get hit by it. And the reduced damage to a 1d8 rather than the 2d8 makes it much less detrimental if someone does happen to get hit by it. And this does make it feel much more natural with ebb and flow. Adding this and doesn't really add too much, really more difficulty to the ogre or the natural ogre as it is written. But it does make it more difficult. So what does that mean for the CR of this creature? How can I tell if this would be a good challenge for my party? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at this actual creature. We'll go ahead and call this Custom Ogre because we don't Customer Ogre. Oh no, we'll call this the Karen Ogre. Ah! Alright, so back to how can we tell if this is a good challenge for my party? Well, that's a great question and one that I really don't have a proper answer for. But let's look at the stat block, right? Alright, so now that we've got the stat block up, let's take a look at it and see how different it is actually from the standard Ogre. Realistically, we never touched the stats, we never touched the hit points or the armor class, and we really didn't change much of the damage output per round. Generally, ogres can do 2d8 plus 4 damage output per round because of their one attack, which means they generally do, 4, 8, 12 points of damage per round. We did add the reaction Instinctual Rage, which means they do an extra 1d8 plus 4 damage per round to multiple potential people, but that's a relatively easy dex save to make, so realistically speaking, it's not too much more damage. And since we kept everything else the same with the exception of some additional utility, it's technically not that much more deadly until you think about the advantage and disadvantage imposed by the being prone or knocked down. CR as a system is a good guideline per se, but it definitely has its flaws. But there are some basic steps you can take to get a good idea of what a CR might be for your monster. Two users on Reddit made this very handy-dandy guide for determining CR that I'm going to put up on the screen now, based upon the monster's offensive and defensive ability, which is really, really great guideline. And since I didn't touch the HP or AC, and really, honestly, not even really the damage, the CR could technically remain the same, and even according to the chart I referenced, it would still remain a CR2 monster. However, since I definitely added some utility to the Ogre, I think it definitely deserves an upgrade on the CR. Not to mention the advantage that it would potentially get upon attacking a monster or a creature that is knocked prone or stunned. You gotta take that into consideration, and unfortunately CR cannot take that into consideration without some serious thought. As such, I would probably label this, rather than a CR2 monster, a CR3 monster, and honestly I might even up the HP depending upon the party that I'm running with. With this, the default Ogre has been given a couple of new skills, abilities, which are definitely going to surprise or even impress some veteran players. And homebrewing, you gotta remember, is not an exact science, and honestly, I find the best results really come from just asking myself, what would I expect this character to do, or this monster to do? The Ogre. Giant lumbering ogre, not very smart, just kind of wildly swinging, rampaging, picking up trees, picking up characters, throwing things. Kind of the idea. And if, like I said earlier on in this video, if you use the guidelines or think about it in terms of sections of action, bonus action, reaction, and movement, you already have a much easier grasp on how to handle it, because you can break it up into smaller segments whenever you're creating your monster. Anyways, given what I've talked about with this monster, the current Ogre, I would probably label this as a CR3 monster currently right now. I would honestly probably up the hit points by maybe about another 5d10 to make it 12d10, and maybe up it to about 80 or 90 hit points, because that would make more sense to me to have this giant lumbering ogre have a little bit more health, and maybe a little bit bigger armor class at 13, because ogres are so easy to hit. But honestly, I think it's good as it is, so I'm going to stick with CR3, maybe CR4 if I increase the armor class or hit points. But again, if you aren't entirely sure how to CR label your monster, be sure to check out that guide or that graph that I put down in the link below. But anyways, that is the video for today. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and really appreciate it, or would appreciate it if you subscribed and posted in the comments what kind of monster you created following this strategy. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I generally reply to every comment thus far. We're not very popular, so I respond to pretty much everything. So please let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you got. Also, be sure to check out our live stream show Behold This Crit here on this channel every Friday at 7 p.m. EST. And that's pretty much all I got, and I've just been rambling at my microphone for probably the past hour now, and I'm just going to keep rambling until we end the video. So thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!